And we are live. Welcome to When the Bit Hits the Fan number 4. I have Will Pangman. Is that how you pronounce that, Will?
Yeah, that's correct.
And he is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a fellow Midwesterner here. I'm also in the geographical region known as Wisconsin, although we're about a 6-hour drive away. I'm closer to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he's closer to Chicago. And I thought it would be interesting. I have never actually talked with Will talking. I've chatted with him a few times on the internet and things, and we've communicated, but I thought it'd be good to just kind of have a chat and get to know what he's been doing. And I know he's been to some of the conferences lately and been very active in the Bitcoin space. He's been doing a lot of things, and I wanted to have him on the show to talk about that. And he has a lot of irons in the fire with his new project coming up with, I'm not sure who is on the team with him, but he has some software coming out that he's going to tell us about, and a bunch of other stuff. So let's get started. And oh, I forgot to put up my bar on the bottom, I guess. I can't get that thing to auto load. So let's start on it. Before we went on the air here, we were talking a little bit about how I had gotten into Bitcoin kind of from the connections I had from learning about Anarchy and things like that. I was kind of a straight ticket Republican before, and I didn't go through the Ron Paul channel or read the Rothbard or any of that stuff. I kind of got started learning about the anarchy and the non-aggression principle and things like that actually through guys like Jeff Berwick, Stefan Molyneux, I think it was James Corbett, the reporter out of Japan. He was probably the first person. I didn't even know he was into the anarchy stuff for about a year after I'd been following him. But I was actually surprised when I found out that there were Bitcoin people that weren't anarchists. And what are your thoughts on that, Will?
Yeah, I guess I would describe myself as an advocate of voluntary society, voluntary association. So some people call that anarchy. I think that's an okay name for it most times. I think that's a word that people often, misuse and misunderstand. There's like a movie coming out. I don't know if that's like a sequel or if it's this movie that I heard was coming out a couple years ago about what happens when there's a day with no laws being enforced or something. So is this like, I don't know if it's a sequel to the earlier one I'd heard about a couple of years ago or if it's the original one, but either way, this is just kind of promoting this idea of anarchy as being very dangerous and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it couldn't be further from it if it's, if you're adhering to axioms like the non-initiation of force and voluntary trade, voluntary interactions. So that's kind of my view on that. I do think it's interesting how, I think the anarchists around Bitcoin, while they may be the vocal majority, they're probably the minority, We hear a lot from them, and they're very smart folks who have great platforms that share really great information about these ideas. But by and large, I think most folks who are involved in Bitcoin or working in and around the space would not self-describe as anarchists. So it's interesting to hear how you came to Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was, I was just, I had heard some people, they were just talking about Bitcoin, and I was like, oh yeah, it's this new currency system, and we can get rid of the Federal Reserve and be independent of all that money, and it's so much better than fiat. And then, I got involved with it, and I found out, there were a lot of, you know, political libertarians involved with it, and then a lot of people that just don't care about politics, and a lot of people just out for a job, and a lot of people are in it because they think the tech is cool, and a lot of people are in it because they want to fraud people, unfortunately. And that's another issue that has been recently with the, we've had a bunch of people, or there's been 4 or 5, 6 people maybe recently that we've had contact with that have had some Bitcoin stolen through, it appears to be two-factor authentication issues with text messaging on their phone. It's just not a secure platform for that. I was chatting on Twitter yesterday with Josh Walker, and he was talking, he'd made a post that was a perfect example of, we have all this cryptography for the Bitcoin itself. We got 256 encryption for Bitcoin, and then we have BIP38 encryption for our keys and all of that, and then send it over open air SMS with the 6-digit PIN. And Satoshi wept.
Yeah, it's the first thing I talk about with people. You mentioned some of the things vaguely I'm involved with, and maybe we can share more with your audience about that as the show progresses. But I've been talking to folks about Bitcoin who have never heard about it before, meaning they haven't even heard about it on the news or anything. And of course, many of the folks I've talked to have maybe heard about it, or maybe last summer they had a negative perception about it because of some of the negative press regarding the Silk Road and other things. But a lot of the folks I talk to, I really try to target those who have never heard of it before, and they all are concerned about its difficulty, how challenging it is technologically for the average computer user. So what I usually, my manner or my presentation for these true Bitcoin virgins has changed a lot in the last year and a half. And right now, I kind of always start with, well, let's first talk about your habits for internet or network security. And I make sure that we understand two-factor authentication, and that's something that not only needs to be enabled on your Bitcoin wallet accounts, but that it needs to also be enabled on your email accounts. That's very important. And then you're bringing up, or go ahead.
I recommend, too, that people don't use a Google email address if they have a different two-factor authentication email address that they can use along with Google Authenticator. That way it separates, because thieves are probably going to be looking for a Gmail address.
Yeah, I like that strategy. I think that's certainly a good practice. However, for most new users, most of them have a Gmail address, and even if they're not their primary account, they still have one, so they can do Google Hangouts or other Google products that they want to use. And so for that reason, I think as long as you tighten up the security settings appropriately on your Google account, there's nothing wrong with using Google. If you want to take a stand against their kind of the way that they may or may not be, liberally sharing your private information with certain state actors, then that's a good reason not to use Google for sure, if that's your choice. But I think by and large, for most average computer users, the kinds of folks who aren't very worried about internet privacy, but maybe they're worried about internet security, and those are two different things, obviously, then Google's fine for them. And as long as they do a couple things to their security settings, they'll be all right. I've actually been alerted prior to enabling two-factor authentication on my Google accounts about a year and a half ago. It was actually the same day as the Silk Road bust, or when the news hit, whatever was that, late September or early October of 2013. The same day, I had 3 of my 5 Google accounts get unauthorized login attempts all from the same place. Maybe some Tor exit node or something. But basically, I was alerted, and I was online at the time, so I was able to quickly go lock down those accounts without anything else being harmed, and changed passwords and redirected other private information, kind of just secured things down a bit more. And Google was very helpful in alerting me to that and making sure that my private information and the Bitcoin accounts that I had attached to some of those email accounts, making sure that those weren't vulnerable for very long during this supposed attack. So I think Google's a good tool sometime for a lot of people if they're not too concerned about the NSA stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and also maybe make some sloppy wallets, which a lot of people maybe don't know what a sloppy wallet is, but there's sloppy wallets and then there's paper wallets, and then there's cold storage. A paper wallet, generally, you'll see one of these, and the color on it is blue. If they print it out with the graphics, it's blue. Those are BIP38 encrypted, which need a password to crack them. So even if a thief steals your piece of paper like this, they would still need your passphrase to get into it. But a wallet like this, if you have something like this on your computer, say you save this as a JPEG or a PDF in with some other stuff on like in your documents folder or something, and maybe put 0.0001 Bitcoin in one of these, and just watch it periodically to see if that goes missing. Because malware generally isn't going to be fussy on whether it takes 63 cents or if it takes, $63,000. It's going to just take it. So if you start to notice these sloppy wallets got 63 cents missing, you want to really watch out for your other ones. Because
yeah, that's really great advice. Just to do some test transactions or to have small balances in some wallets if you're testing a process for cold storage, or testing a process for private key generation offline, to make sure that you did that process correctly or as securely as possible. That is a great method for that. So there are some basic tutorials about this, and I actually haven't talked with Christoph yet since he's been planning this second book of his, but I did read a tweet from him, or maybe it was a Facebook update, either one, where he's talking about writing a nice guide for beginning users to do just what you described, how to create secure paper wallets offline, which I think is great. There are plenty of guides out there, but some of them aren't very comprehensive, or you need to be very careful when you do these stepwise instructions, because oftentimes the authors of stepwise instructions will skip an important step, or they maybe aren't using your operating system, or maybe they're not using the tools that you use through your same browser or whatever, and they don't cover one little thing, and you're left kind of in the lurch, like, well, the next step says to do something, but I can't see that direction on my hardware, on my gear. So I know Christoph is incredibly conscientious and thorough in his explication of these strategies, and I'm really looking forward to using his great work as a tool for future outreach.
And our friend Madbitcoins, Tom, made a video this past weekend of how to do a paper wallet, which is really a great resource. I watched that video on Saturday, and then I followed his instructions on Sunday. Unfortunately, the video is for a Macintosh, and I don't have a Mac, but I was able to follow his video on a PC, and once you get past burning the CD and get your computer booted, it's all the same, because the Linux operating system is the same on a PC and on a Mac. So that the first 5 minutes of that was just Mac centric, but the last 20 minutes was pretty much Linux based. So, and he was very thorough on that, so I do recommend anybody watching now, if they want to try that and just make a practice paper wallet, to do that. But that is, and then recommend keeping your passphrase and your paper wallets, encrypted paper wallets, separate. That's what I talked to my wife this morning about that, and I showed her my wife knows nothing about Bitcoin, and it was, I mean, she kind of, I explained it to her as, yeah, they're kind of like a stock. It's kind of like stocks is what I do. And
yeah, I guess for someone who's in total novice, that's sometimes a helpful way to describe it. I mean, there's lots of analogies people can use to approximate what Bitcoin is or help explain it. But bottom line is, it's actually like none of the analogies that are used that you see circulated like 90% of the time. So it depends who your audience is and what you're trying to share with them or impart to them. How you're going to reach them. So certain analogies might work better than others. I know one I've been using a lot lately is just the email analogy to explain how public and private keys work. I think that's really useful. Again, it's an approximation, and it's kind of a poor approximation, but it does a good job of helping people understand the relationship between public and private keys and how that relates to some of their current online activity.
yeah, and what I did was, she has no interest in learning it. And I said, this is a paper wallet. I have thousands of dollars on this. And the password is separate. I keep the password in with my silver bullion. And this is in the safe. They're in separate locations. This is in with my important documents, like the title to my car and that. If anything happens to me, that's where it's at. And she's like, well, how do I get the money out of it? Can you write down steps on how to do it?
Just tell her that it is money.
And I said, well, if I die, contact Will in Milwaukee, or she's like, or Christoph, she goes. And I said, yeah, get a hold of those guys if something happens to me. They will help you.
Yeah, well, God forbid, Jamie, but certainly your wife's welcome to reach out to me, and I know Christoph is incredibly helpful. Thomas, Madbitcoins, he'll help. There's really no shortage of Bitcoiners who will, provide like ethical support to a total nescient novice. So that's what's really great about this community, and certainly the folks that contribute to the WCN, the World Crypto Network. Everybody's great.
Yeah, and I found that as well. When I was getting started, I had a few just very, very basic questions, and I was like, God, I feel embarrassed asking some people about this, but I really want to get started in this, but I don't want to put real money in this if I don't understand it.
Yeah,
And
that's something. Go ahead, finish it.
and the questions I had were, okay, well, I don't understand what you know, they talk about these wallets. What is a cold wallet and what's a hot wallet, and how come some of these wallets I can download and some of them I can't? You know, and I got a hold of a guy. I'm not sure where he is. I think he's down around Tennessee or something. His name is John Meese. Um, he's a great young man. I had saw article he had published that was talking about Bitcoin wallets and why you shouldn't keep your money on an exchange. And it was, you know, the analogy of you don't just leave cash laying on a counter at a store or somewhere and walk away and come back 3 days later and expect it to be there. But I I got brave, and you know, I sent him a email or contacted him on Facebook, and it just happened. He was online at the time, and he got back to me within like 30 seconds. And I was like, wow, that's the best support I've ever gotten.
Yeah, yeah, it's really great, this community, how they really rise to the occasion. Everyone is so eager to help new folks who clearly show that intrinsic motivation to know about Bitcoin and to quickly integrate it into their daily habits and their financial life, which is just like so encouraging. I mean, I'm always just feeling like kind of blessed or whatever, fortunate to be around such great minds and such helpful people, such positive people. It's really awesome. I mean, if you're on the fence out there watching the show, just curious about this, or you don't think it's for you, or it's too intimidating, just like Jamie just described, don't hesitate to reach out to people, because there are so many of us who want to help, and you can reach me at my Twitter right down here, and you can reach Jamie.
And you know, and that's the thing that I have found is, you know, there's kind of a, I don't know how it got started, but a lot of people think we're shifty businessmen or something, and it's couldn't be farthest from the truth. The people I have met, I mean, there's dishonest people out there, don't get me wrong, but the people I have met are the most ethical business people I have ever dealt with.
Yeah, I think you're talking about two important things here, like one being the business practice or the modus operandi for so many of these folks who are attracted to Bitcoin and doing big important things on them. And then you also mentioned your curiosity and a fear of asking questions because of, well, I would argue that's kind of how society has treated us people as growing up, and that's how school kind of treats people in lots of ways, accidentally or intentionally, however you see it. But bottom line is, school isn't very friendly to curious children. There's a way of learning that they think is the only way, and you know, there's lots of bells and whistles or rhetoric around different kinds of intelligence or different kinds of ways of learning for children, but it all basically gets funneled into the same rubric, the same pattern of information delivery and regurgitation. So, and that's very stifling of curiosity. So many people who have this twinge of curiosity that you were just talking about, they do have that sort of aversion to asking questions or what sound like a dumb question in their mind, and they're wondering who they can ask without offending you know? And that's really unfortunate. It's a byproduct of kind of how things have been, because a lot of people that I explain Bitcoin to just on the street or in passing, they're unaware of how money actually works, which is an important starting point to explain how Bitcoin works, or even just parts of how it works. So the curiosity thing, you know, I like to always say Bitcoin favors the curious. If you remain curious, undyingly curious, undeterred, then you will go far in this space. You'll be able to, even if you just want to put some savings into Bitcoin for posterity or something like that, just on a minor level, it will come to you because of your curiosity. And from curiosity, I think, comes courage. And you mentioned like your reluctance to ask questions is a natural reaction that I think a lot of us have, especially, you know, I know you live up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which I know continually is rated as one of the best places to like raise a family in the country. I've seen that statistic so many times throughout my upbringing in Wisconsin about Eau Claire. And I visited Eau Claire.
Children.
I can vouch for that. Eau Claire is very, very friendly. But again, you still see lots of shady business dealings and just people wondering where they're going to find their next easy get, or where they're going to have to look out to avoid being somebody's easy get. So it's still everywhere, even in the nicest cities in the country, you know, one of which being Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So yeah, and what you see with Bitcoin, I think this is what it does. It favors the curious because there's so much it can teach, not just about computer science, information technology, you know, networking, all those kinds of things, cryptography, mathematics, but much more so about the other things like human behavior, psychology, philosophy, sociology, anthropology. It's really, really incredible how it sort of peels away the layers of the onion for a person on their own, as long as they stay curious and looking at it. That doesn't require like an outside salesman really to come and help you peel away those layers of the onion or keep you stuck in a meeting, a sales presentation. To do that, it's really a process that happens on one's own as soon as they get curious about it, which is one of the things I love most about it. And I could talk about that for probably.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I went from being, you know, timid of asking those few questions to now I'm on, this is my 4th live show on the internet of having guests that I've never spoken to before. Did I lose you, Will?
Oh, I'm here. Yeah, that's it's a huge step. It feels like when you look at it in yourself. I mean, just to share my experience a bit, that's kind of how it was for me. I was in a career I wasn't really satisfied with. I had bounced around to a couple careers in my early professional life. Nothing was very fulfilling, and I didn't see anything as being a mainstay long term, or really being able to meet my needs for my family financially, or even in terms of like happiness quotient long term. And then I learned about Bitcoin. It took me a while to actually, when I first heard about it, several months went by, heard about it again, really said, all right, now this thing that was interesting that first time is even more interesting now. I'm going to put down some things and start really learning about it because it's fascinating on the surface and I want to dig deeper. And once you do a little bit of deeper digging, especially for those of us who don't have a tech background or don't necessarily come from the computer industry or technology or startup culture or things like that, it takes a bit more effort, a bit more brute force. I usually refer to it as like brute forcing your own learning, pouring through those forums and Reddit posts and sifting through lots of impertinent material to find those golden nuggets that are going to answer your questions. And there should be an easier way, and that's really what stimulated me to pursue educating and doing outreach with regard to Bitcoin. 2 reasons. There is a huge need for it. There's a huge demand and very, very little supply of it in any coherent or appetizing fashion. And the other reason was it would help me learn on my own, right? Like I learn best by teaching, I think. And so as soon as I feel like I have something worthy of sharing with other people, I'm going to kind of push the limits of it with them so that we're kind of learning alongside each other, even though maybe I'm in the role of having slightly more knowledge that I'm sharing to the counterparty in that situation. But it helped me learn more and more.
Yeah, peer learning situations, and that way you can bounce ideas off each other too. And you know, it was kind of that got me where I wanted to do this show, was because I saw kind of a gap in the knowledge level that was out there about Bitcoin. Was there were these guys that knew a whole lot about it, and then there were people that knew nothing about it. And to bridge that gap of, okay, well, where do you get started and how do you get to here? And and that's what I've been kind of working towards, is to try to bridge that gap. And you know, when somebody talks about cold storage or something, I want to hold up something that people can see and say, no, you don't have to put it in your freezer. That's just a figure of speech. And you know, but somebody new coming into it don't know what a figure of speech is when they're talking about it, compared to what, you know, well, is a paper wallet, is paper a figure of speech then?
Yeah,
You know,
it can get very confusing. The terminology and jargon is still being worked out. People are trying to decide what to call different denominations of Bitcoin, bits, millibits, you know, or other funny names that people have come up with. Like I think Tom's favorite is the Ringo or something, which is I think 100 satoshis. I'm not sure. I could be totally wrong on that, but I know he likes to call one of the units a Ringo. So again, it's the jargon terminology is cloudy, very kind of, you know, there's no standard, which is kind of how an open source project normally goes. I mean, you're talking about self-directed learning, peer learning, intrinsic motivation and curiosity, and the confidence that comes out of that. And this is the stuff that I get excited about, that Bitcoin can provide our civilization around the world. So many of us who have experience with the Western compulsory education system, you know, public schools and private schools, but just the way education is delivered and how people are taught to learn. They're taught to learn from experts or from books that are given to them. They're not really taught to go into libraries and do research for themselves. I know almost every school kid out there hates research projects because, you know, it's not like something they really want to do. But if there is something you want to learn, you're happy to go and find out about it. And if people say, hey, you can learn this at the library, go look here, you might actually go do it because you want to. So what Bitcoin allows is kind of like, it gives people a glimpse through a window, kind of what the world outside this box in our heads looks like. And some of us want to go outside and explore that and play in that playground for a little while and see what that's like. You know, you look outside, you see it might seem a bit menacing or foreign territory, or you might see, you know, a tire swing and want to ride, you know. So, or you might see, like, you know, some spaceship launch pad or something, and it looks like fun. It looks like a great adventure. So again, most folks don't have experience following their intrinsic motivations because they're not allowed to, whether in school or at home with you know, their home life, their parenting, upbringing, or even in their jobs as adults. I mean, there's lots of things that people who have many different kinds of jobs. I know I've talked to so many people who work in so many different industries at, you know, all levels of employment, from entry level to executive and everything in between, who talk about wanting to do something better for the company or better for the process that they're in or better for their team that they're working with, and they're not allowed to because of the role they have, and it really just stifles innovation. So when people get a glimpse of Bitcoin and how quickly it innovates and iterates and how quickly it's spread and grown, it tells them that they're that what they suspected all along was a better avenue or outcome is actually true and out there, possible for them to touch or ride on, right? Grab a hold and take a ride. And that's what, you know, Bitcoin proved to me. I mean, I was determined to find a way out of the doldrums I felt myself in professionally. I just didn't know how that would look, and I didn't know where that was, and I just believed that something someday was out there. So Bitcoin came along and it showed me a couple things, and I think it's done this for lots and lots of people. This open source project doesn't require that you submit a resume. It doesn't require prerequisite classes. It doesn't require permission slips or licenses or any of this kind of stuff, any red tape or bureaucratic overhead or any of that. All it requires is your curiosity and your time, and it will reward you because your curiosity and your time spent will show you where the rewards are for you to grab a hold of. And it's like staking your claim in the Western land grab, except you know, it's on the cloud, and there's like much less violence involved.
Yeah, and I kind of felt the same way about it. You know, I was feeling pretty hopeless for mankind with the you know, the overwhelming presence of the NSA and, you know, how the police state in general and all of that, and everything was starting to look pretty hopeless to me. And then I started looking into, you know, this, and I was like, wow, it's not all that bad. There's a
Yeah.
lot of young people out there that are really, really smart.
Yeah, you get to, and this is a technology that gets you in touch with them, you know, and maybe you didn't even know about Bitcoin, but you're really upset over any social issue from any like party affiliation or anywhere on the political spectrum. Everyone is complaining, you know. Like, I think Louis C.K. has a great little bit where he's like, you know, everyone's running around with technology, seeing how awesome things are, but everything in the world sucks, and nobody can make up their minds. And it's a little funny little story, but it's kind of true. We have all these great conveniences that people really do like, and so much so that they get addicted to some of them sometimes. And then there's also just so many problems in the world, unrest, just violence, you know, conflicts everywhere. I mean, we have the internet shows us more and more of these conflicts on a daily, heck, hourly basis. So, you know, it can become incredibly daunting and hopeless, like you said. And I know I've had feelings like that. You know, when I knew that I was going to become a father, I thought very hard about how to protect our family, especially this incredibly innocent, small human being, from the horrors that you see in the world, even the ones that we encounter here in America, which is, you know, relatively speaking, pretty much a great place in a lot of different ways. Now, you mentioned the police state, and you mentioned the NSA spying and things like that, and this is stuff that feels so huge and outside of your control, and it is a reality, and it is a major problem. And I think people are starting to see that, and people may feel hopeless because they've had run-ins with the law that were totally unjust, or they've had problems with banks, foreclosures on their homes, or predatory lending kind of levied against them in a way. You know, there's so many folks who are undereducated who get caught up in this predatory lending things. You know, college freshmen with the credit cards, all the way up to, you know, the struggling family in the inner city who all of a sudden is getting approved for a home loan, and they're thrilled, right? Only to find out within 5 to 6 years later or something that they're underwater and they're getting foreclosed on, and they're worse off after that than they were before they got approved for the home loan. So, you know, it can be incredibly sad and daunting, but there is this really great boon in front of us with this technology, and just the kind of communities that kind of erupt with it, you know. It's really special. It's cool to be a part of, just to pay attention to, even if you think the technology is over your head or whatever. Just take a peek and stay close to it. It's going to benefit you in the long term, and it will teach you things. This is really what I love to talk about. Is it teaches you how to find your own way into peace, your own way into a happier, more fulfilling life. It offers you these opportunities. You know, man, I wanted to start a company by now. I'm, 36. I told myself I'd work this job for 12 years, save up some money, and be able to start my own candy shop, family business. That was my dream. Well, if you have a way to do that online and using cryptocurrencies, you have the whole global market at your disposal, and these dreams are now possible for people.
And crowdfunding now with things like Indiegogo and StartJoin and all of those things. I mean, when I was growing up, or I went to high school in the 80s. Ronald Reagan was president. We had the Reaganomics and all of that crap. And, I mean, we never imagined this stuff.
Did you feel, Jamie, like you would embark on such a huge subject, like embark on learning such a huge subject at your age, let's say 5 years ago? Like you would totally learn a whole new industry 5 years ago? Did you think that would happen?
Well, it doesn't seem like a new industry to me because, I've been doing computer stuff since like 1981 or 82, so it's still computer stuff to me. Because, I started off with a Commodore VIC-20 that hooked up to the TV and just ran off at like 8 bits of RAM.
Yeah, that's the early days for sure.
And yeah, I mean, my dream was to get a cassette player adapter to hook up to it so I could save the stuff that I programmed.
That is, yeah, and look how far we've come, right?
Yeah, and now, I mean, I got this phone that is probably more powerful than the computer I have in my basement that I was using up until last fall. And
yeah, it's pretty amazing.
This Android Google Nexus tablet I have and the laptop and everything, it's like...
Yeah, they're incredible tools for us if we want to use them that way. I have these discussions. I'm in Brooklyn, New York at the moment, and I am socializing with some old friends, and I used to live around here, and so I'm back kind of visiting, and there's, of course, topics of Bitcoin. Folks ask what I'm up to, and so it comes up, and of course, also in the same discussions, the news stories about Facebook doing psychological experiments that are, by all standards unethical. I mean, as a psychology major, I can tell you that what Facebook was doing is incredibly unethical and would never pass for an academic study ever.
I didn't hear about that. Can you brief me?
It has to. Yeah, maybe I'll send you a link and you can put it in the show notes or something, or the about section. But basically, they were manipulating news feeds to alter Facebook users' emotions.
Okay, because I had talked to Christoph this morning, and those all those links you see for which movie character are you? Take this test to see which movie character are you, or which, who would you be in this book?
Which Game of Thrones character are you?
Yeah, I mean, I did one of those once, and I was like, this is a psych test. And I'm like, I'm not doing these anymore. And I'd mentioned it to some of my friends, and they're like, you're paranoid.
Yeah.
I looked at another one that was for something, a totally different movie in a book or something, and I looked at another one, I didn't fill it out. I'm like, This is
Yeah,
a psychological examination. They're collecting
sure.
fake profiles on people.
Yeah, well, here in Brooklyn, it's very liberal leaning mostly, and they're very tech savvy, or at least up to times for the population is. It's pretty young population. Everyone's on many different electronic devices, connected devices, and yeah, so there are some like Luddites around here too. Folks who don't own a television and try not to own many electronics and only use bicycles, and that's cool. I totally love that. And they are very skeptical of Bitcoin because it's also this technology, and maybe they've heard that the mining algorithm is very environmentally unfriendly, perhaps, or whatever. But so talking with them about technology and kind of the negative side of it is really an interesting new challenge. I spent most of the last 4 years in southeastern Wisconsin. Now, it's a major metropolitan area, but it's a very small market town. So lots of folks are, maybe come from a rural background, even though they live closer to the city for work as an adult. And then there's many that come from larger cities, or many that have always lived in cities, or always lived in Milwaukee. But so there's much more of I don't know, like I don't want to say narrow perspective, but maybe somewhat more limited than, say, a major world metro center like New York or LA or Tokyo or London and so on. And here, you get more diversity of the views, and by and large, they see Facebook as negative, and or they still use it, but they still see it as negative. And so yeah, the kinds of things that technology is being used for in a negative sense, if you just look at them from a zoomed out perspective, they're very centralized. They're very centralizing too. Like they're going about collection and sticking data in repositories that are highly secured and internally controlled and not transparent. And again, this is what the NSA is doing with data collection. This is what Facebook's doing with identity formation and profiling and social media networking. And many, many other services are like this. And then there are a few that are not doing that, like Linux, the Linux community,
Yeah,
and they're
and
having a tough time competing with the big boys, right? And then there's Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin is even a bigger arena that can touch more people, because to use Linux, it looks weird, right? Linux may never go mainstream. It might always remain enterprise level, or for like the super geek, or the super interested in privacy, for example. But Bitcoin, because it's money, because it actually can transmit value and has this ability to trustlessly exchange value between people directly, what is it? Non-contiguously, geographically, or yeah. So it's powerful. It's something we can use to reach all these people. And so I'm having these conversations, and I'm sensing people coming around and realizing that Bitcoin is really an egalitarian force, a democratizing force in the world. So it's easily seen that way if you just have a good presentation around it. So I'm really interested in honing and polishing my approach and helping other folks who are really good presenters do the same. You don't want to talk about mining to a bunch of non-technical users. You wouldn't talk about mining. You just wouldn't. You don't want to talk about Austrian economics to a bunch of left-leaning environmentalists or something. You just don't want to mention that kind of stuff. So you don't avoid it.
Marketing.
Yeah, exactly. It's public relations. It's propaganda.
Yeah. Good old Edward Bernays would be proud. Well, let's move on here. We're almost up on an hour here. This is fascinating talking about this stuff. We could probably have 24 hours a day to talk this.
Yeah, as soon as I get a breather here from some of the intense traveling I've been doing, I plan on doing some writing or really kind of honing in on the psychosocial effects of Bitcoin, the kind of the anthropological metamorphosis that I see going on thanks to Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I wish I could express myself better in writing. I write very good technical documents, but that's as far as I've ever went is writing like instructions and things like that because I don't know, that's how my brain works, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, but you know, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin community as a whole, let's say, needs that too. They need folks with that skill too. So, like, I like to always say, for anyone who's watching, you know, Bitcoin is hiring. That's something Andreas Antonopoulos frequently points out.
Yep.
Bitcoin is hiring, and it needs you, no matter what you think your skills are or are not. You know, for example, I used Bitcoin to propel me to attain the skills that I wanted to have but wasn't ever previously in a position to learn with any job or school environment. So I used that, the arena, the community around Bitcoin, kind of to recreate myself in many ways, and that's been an incredible experience. I want to share more details about with the world too as time goes on.
Yeah, and you know, I had it on my calendar actually in my reminders there to look into Bitcoin. It was one of my tasks, and I had it there for months.
I think I
Yeah.
wrote the same note back in like the summer of 2012. I wrote myself the same note, research Bitcoin, and I had it like once a month to remind me, and I must have gone through that like 4 or 5, 6 times before I finally saw something else, some media where someone I somewhat respect or their opinion mentioned Bitcoin, and whatever they said attended to that word made me be like, all right, commence 3 months of sleepless nights and research.
Yeah, and then I think, and I was talking to a friend of mine in Madison, and he was having some problems with his job and things like that. And I'm like, you know, we really need to look into this Bitcoin thing. You know, I think it's something that you and I could benefit from. You know, we're both computer guys, and this is just
Yeah,
something that,
it's something that everybody can benefit from. I'm you know, a firm believer in that, and I love to help people discover what those ways that their life can be benefited by Bitcoin are. So if you're curious, like I do this, then this, and I don't think Bitcoin has a place in my life, you know, hey, try to refute my claim, I guess, that Bitcoin can benefit everybody, and we'll see. We'll see if you're right. I'm open to the fact that maybe there are some people outside of central bankers and bank board of directors members or shareholders, you know, who wouldn't benefit from Bitcoin. I certainly think there's an argument to be made that even those folks that are frequently, you know, behind the scenes or whatever with the banking system in the world can certainly benefit from Bitcoin too.
yeah, and it's kind of, it's, you know, there used to be a lot of, you'd see these infomercials on at 2 o'clock in the morning on, oh, send me 59.95 and I'll send you a videotape on how to get rich and how to do this and whatever. And a lot of these videos that you see on YouTube now that are free, and people are giving away this information, are much better than anything that they ever had on, that people spent money on those infomercials, because these people want to truly help other people that are putting these videos out on YouTube. And most of them, if they do, if they are looking for a payment in putting the video out, it's not something that it's a, either you pay me for it or you don't get the product. It's, if you enjoyed it, send me a tip. It's kind of a, I like that sort of a business model for sharing information and new stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, open source in general, I think, is teaching the world of commerce all these new business models for value adding, you know, between businesses and different parties. So yeah, I mean, where a lot of people think that, oh, if you open source things or release things Creative Commons, or you don't protect intellectual property of this or that, then you're really doing a disservice to capitalism or the economy as a whole, and that is just entirely fallacious. You know, there's there's so much to gain from sharing, and there are still things that are worth selling at a cost or for a price. You know, there are still plenty of things people are willing to pay for, even though you give away a lot for free. I mean, some of the most successful entrepreneurs stick their necks out for free, and it is a huge risk, especially when you've lived an entire life on a salary or paycheck to paycheck kind of lifestyle, or on a fixed income. If you're a pensioner, retiree, or, you know, disabled or whatever, it is incredibly scary to take a risk with your time to you know, pre-invest all this time and energy into creating something unique, and then to share it freely with the world, and then, you know, on a hope and a prayer, cross your fingers that it'll pay itself back to you. But what the new world of tech and a global economy, an internet economy, are teaching us, especially things like Bitcoin, but there are many other examples that are not cryptocurrency related. What they're teaching us is you're not selling what you're creating. You're really selling yourself. You're selling your authorship. You're selling your reputation. People will come back to you. You're creating a business in and of yourself. And this is, I think, where the future is going. People talk about micro-entrepreneurship, the sharing economy. These kinds of things really are trending toward more and more people who are out of work because of, you know, the old system decaying, will hopefully, I think, find themselves in a much better situation in the near future if they decide to turn themselves into a business and share what they know, share what they already own, or, you know, sell their skills just directly to people.
I agree. If you build up a good reputation, and, you know, word of mouth is one of the best advertising ways in the world. It always has been. Somebody tells you, oh yeah, I have a good mechanic or whatever. Chances are you're going to go to them over whose ad you see in the paper, because you trust the person that told you.
Sure.
And now with social networking and everything, you make all these friends, and if they recommend somebody to you to do something, you know, oh, you know, like if somebody was looking for a cryptographer or something now, the first person that come to my mind would be Christoph. I'd recommend him, you know.
Sure. Yeah, and the people who've helped you, you will help in return. There's really a lot of great motivational speakers and business advisors out there with free videos on YouTube. Again, they give their content away for free too, much of it, who really proselytize this fact you just pointed out, which is that people who have done favors for them will do favors for others. And it's not a matter of I do a favor for you, Jamie, you do me a favor in return. No, no, no. It's I do a favor for you and maybe a couple other people, and each of you who had my favor go and do those similar favors or totally different ones to others. And it webs out like that. And that is decentralization. That is the sharing economy in a nutshell. I mean, this is really like where we're going. It's very positive. It's one of the reasons why I get criticized for being so optimistic all the time. I don't know if I get criticized for it as much anymore. I used to throughout my life, but now, because some of what I'm saying I think is starting to make sense, or Bitcoin is helping me make more sense perhaps, that folks aren't criticizing me for being optimistic. They're thanking me for being optimistic.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that movie where I think it was Pay It Forward, you know, where you do a favor for somebody and they do a favor for somebody else, and hopefully you do a favor for two people, those two people do for two people. There used to be a shampoo commercial like that, and it grows exponentially.
Yeah, so just how this works in Bitcoin, I said that's decentralization. So I just want to, like, if people think I'm blowing smoke, I just want to mention, for example, the way the Bitcoin network works is Satoshi had code and he published it online, and he used his connections that he'd made in a social network, really a forum message board, to tell people, hey, try to test this with me and see how it goes. And as more and more people added themselves to the network, each participant had more value immediately, exponentially more. So there is a square, it's not always a square relationship, but at least for the first two users, the first actually, well, I'm going to get this wrong, but basically one person turns into two, two people turn into four, and that the value generated from the four participants is a square greater than it was for the previous number. So it's that's how it works. So like that's how the network effect works with Bitcoin and with many other things. Bitcoin or goodwill. Goodwill has network effect. That's kind of what we're talking about here, doing favors for people, and then they do favors for more people. And you don't need a favor back because you're busy doing more favors already, And
It makes you feel good.
yes, there's lots of. So right now, what happens? We outsource feeling good. I mean, this is getting back to kind of the beginning of the show, talking about anarchy and stuff. This is a great way to talk to people about anarchy and how it is in a positive light. That you do something nice for someone because it feels good, and then they go and do something nice for somebody else because they had the good feeling from you, and they want to find themselves in a position to do that for others, what was done for them. And with the state or with governments or any sort of central body of any kind, what you have is kind of a system where your goodwill is something you outsource to a third party to take care of for you. And that is so depriving of that good feeling you talked about. That doesn't allow a person to have or share that good feeling because, and then, this is why we get people using hashtags to save elephants or save girls in Africa instead of, actually doing something tangible for the cause you care about. So,
Yeah, I thought it was so asinine when they said, "Yeah, we need to fix healthcare. Let's socialize insurance." I was like, "What the hell? How did we go from healthcare, which is doctors and stuff, to insurance? I
yeah,
mean,
well,
they're two separate industries."
yeah. So there's, you can go down the rabbit hole with those things, and I think that's a worthy trip if you have the time. But
Yeah,
bottom line, it's it's a lot of old systems that are decaying or, like deconstructing of themselves because of their very natures, in my opinion. But they're falling apart, and we're putting them together, centralizing these falling apart institutions even more so as a solution. And it looks good on paper, and it sounds good, but we've seen in practice that that's really not the way we want to go. We need to start anew. And you mentioned also at the beginning of the show, Bitcoin's great because it can replace the Federal Reserve. Maybe that'll happen, maybe not. I don't really think Bitcoin needs to replace anything. It already exists, and it works, and it does what it does very well. And you can do Bitcoin parallel to an existing system, like say the Federal Reserve banking system, without having to choose one or the other. And if you want to choose one or the other, you're free to do that too. I like to tell people Bitcoin is the only currency in the world that no one is forced to use.
yeah, it's great because it's a voluntary system. You can choose to use it, or you can choose not to use it, and that's what, I keep seeing a lot of people with these altcoins too are like, "Oh, this is going to be the Bitcoin killer," and it's like, well, why can't they both exist? I mean,
Yeah, and they will. And they
competition is
will.
a healthy marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the people who are working on some of these altcoin projects are identifying faults or some things lacking in Bitcoin, and they're filling a market need in some cases, and in other cases they're just pump and dump schemes. But
Yeah.
and there's other cases too. Those aren't the two choices. But yeah, it's basically a foregone conclusion, I think, that Bitcoin is going to survive at least the altcoins that we're seeing come out right now. Maybe some altcoin to come out in the future would usurp Bitcoin, but it has been very, very robust through all of the challenges it has faced in the first 5 years. I don't really see anything upsetting that in the near future, and I don't see any reason for more altcoins to exist either.
Yeah, it's the base currency right now for cryptocurrencies. All the altcoins are pretty much based in Bitcoin, so you pretty much have to buy Bitcoin and then buy your altcoins with Bitcoin. So they both can exist simultaneously and not hurt each other too, which I think is a good thing. Let's talk a bit about this new product or project or company. I'm not really sure what to call it. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
I think I know it. Yeah, I'll save you. It's pronounced Tapeke, and it's spelled T as in Tom, APEKE.com. So what Tapeke is a personal finance application for cryptocurrencies. I'm on the team. I'm not a part of the original founding group, but I was brought on pretty early on to handle, PR, marketing, and communications for them. And I think it's a great company, a personal finance application, basically like Mint.com, but for your cryptocurrencies. And there really isn't anything out there like what we're building at Tapeke. There is Mint.com with their relationship with Coinbase, and there's other kinds of applications, smartphone or tablet applications, and also some web apps that are seeking to do similar things or things like that. I've seen some good ones. I've tried them out. They're good, but I think what we're building is really special. First and foremost, for the design and the user experience, you're going to enjoy using this. It's going to be very intuitive and fun to look at and fun to play with. It's going to be a place you want to go to. But basically, a couple nutshell comments about what Tapeke is. You'll be able to upload your public keys. We will never ask for private keys. You'll be able to upload your public keys from every wallet you have into our dashboard, your dashboard, and see your balances on all the addresses. I'm sorry?
That allows only the balance. It
Correct.
doesn't show, public keys only allow to view the balance.
Right. So it'll share with you a much more coherent, much more user-friendly reflection of the usage or the behavior of those accounts. Each wallet address is basically an account. And so you'll be able to do some more in-depth analytics or financial planning or budgeting or just tracking for your company or your small business or any project. And you'll be able to have shared accounts in the future, although we'll probably roll out without that feature to start. And it'll just be a nice way for you to never lose track of any of your Bitcoin wallets anymore. You'll be able to know that certain wallet exists, and maybe you have labeled it when you entered it into the dashboard. You've labeled it something that helps you remember where to find it. So no more lost paper wallets or forgotten web wallet accounts like on your favorite poker site or whatever. That Bitcoin from half a year ago that's in your poker site account that you haven't played on in 7 or 8 months but totally forgot about won't go missing for forever if you have a tool like this. So
I finally recovered the $5 or I think I had $25 left on PokerStars and Fiat from when before they banned playing with real money on there.
Yeah.
I finally.
Yeah, and then that's gone, right?
No, I was able to retrieve it a couple months ago. I was like, Well, it's been over 5 years now. They probably aren't going to let me start playing with it again. I'm going to cash it out and buy Bitcoin.
That's probably a good plan.
And
But yeah,
I was able to retrieve it. I was pretty happy that I got my 25 bucks back after 5 years.
yeah, that's really good. You know, wow, that's good that they were judicious in holding that for you. But we've seen with Bitcoin startups, and you know, anyone can pop up a website in their basement that has nowhere near the staffing of poker stars or something, and it'll be gone. You know, unless you know, if the site goes down or someone walks off with it or whatever. But so the other nice things about our company, I think, is that we're a fully Bitcoin company. We're completely bootstrapped with Bitcoin. Our company does not use a bank account. Every employee involved in the company accepts Bitcoin for their paycheck in full. And it's nice to not ever have to need to deal with banks when you're running a business. I think this is something that I personally, and I know our founder and CEO, Nicolo Lazzarin, really respected about the way blockchain.info runs their businesses, you know, and it really keeps a clean business when you don't have to deal with the troubles of fiat money and banking interfaces. So that's another really great feature about us. The other thing is you'll be able to choose your level of security. So if you're worried about us storing data, we will never store data unless you ask us to, and there will be different settings for choosing your desired security, you know, login procedure, anywhere from just your basic password like you normally do for most websites, all the way to RSA encrypted password where you need to input your public and private RSA key to log into your account, and then nothing is stored. It's all client-side encrypted for the user. So even if we're subpoenaed for private, you know, for usage history for our users and customers, we could not submit that because we wouldn't have it. So these are really great things that I love about this business. And we're providing a tool that's going to make Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies easier to use for people on a daily basis, where you can see all of your accounts at one touch, at a glance, in one place. You won't be able to spend money through there because that would involve private keys, obviously. But you'll have ways of moving you'll have ways you want to do that if you're concerned with privacy and security and stuff that you'll want to have control over anyway. So that's not a feature I think that Tapeke being without is a hindrance. In fact, I think it's a strength. So yeah, do you have any questions about it?
Yeah, so is this like a separate app then that's web-based, or is it run inside a browser, or is it platform dependent, or that's what I'm not really clear on.
Sure, it's totally platform compatible with anything. It's a web app that's fully mobile responsive, so it'll show up very deliciously on any device you have. And yeah, we're making it incredibly flexible. I think people will really love using this. It'll be like everyone has their kind of go-to Bitcoin app. Some folks love Zero Block because it's got the news and the price alerts and things like that. Some folks love, oh, I forget what it's called, but there's one that allows you to enter in all of your holdings for all of the different cryptos you own and kind of see your portfolio that way. But that's all, you have to do all that manually. Nice thing about Tapeke is kind of similar to that, only you don't have to enter any amounts. You don't have to enter anything like that. You can just enter the public keys, and all kinds of great analytics and statistics are crunched for you and made, you know, available in just like bite-sized pieces of content for you to enjoy. You know, pie graphs, charts, very simple, easy things to read that you've had a lot of authorship or creative license over customizing, so it can show you the things that you care about. You know, I know when I use some personal finance apps, it shows me a lot of stuff that my financial behavior just doesn't include, and so it's things that I don't care about. So I stopped using them because they're designed for other people. But this will be an application that folks can design for themselves.
Yeah, I tried using things like QuickBooks and Microsoft Money and things like that, and I was like, this stuff is just has way too much crap in it and it makes it too cumbersome for what I want. I want something that I can just basically grab what I want and put it there
Yeah.
and have that part there. Right now, what I just use a Google spreadsheet or Google Sheets, and I have that call up my balances. You can just call the blockchain API to pull up balances, but it doesn't interact well with formulas, so you still can see the balance, but you have to type it in another, another
Mm.
cell to have it calculate.
Yeah.
So
I
while
think
it,
this is kind of like the next step for a lot of Bitcoin apps. I mean, it's interesting, people have been developing around Bitcoin for 5 years, certainly the last 2 years very fervently, and there have been lots of advancements made. At a certain point in the last year, year and a half, a lot of the development, energy, and talent shifted over to altcoins and like offshoot kind of projects. And it went away from core development, and it went away from like tools that were built around Bitcoin. Now, there are some exceptions to what I just said. Like, for example, BitPay. I think they've spent almost all their time iterating on the Bitcoin core and like making more and more and more tools that interface with existing shopping cart softwares and so on and so on. They're really impressive in that regard. But yeah, lots of development has gone away from making tools around Bitcoin so that Bitcoin can be easier and more user-friendly and more appealing visually to the average non-technical computer user. And that's what I think we're going to be able to deliver with Tapeke. It's going to be beautiful and fun. It's going to look very familiar. For as great of a company and an app as blockchain.info is, I still encounter people that I'm encouraging to start Bitcoin. I'll take them to blockchain.info, or I'll have them download either Mycelium or blockchain application on their smart device. And almost with all the non-technical users who still use a smartphone, almost all of them say that they're having trouble navigating like the first initial few pages of, let's say, blockchain.info to get to their wallet. It doesn't look familiar enough yet to the average computer user's tools that they're used to. And it's because Bitcoin is complicated. And I think a lot of these companies have to rush to market with products, and so they lack on the user interface and graphic design and stuff, and they make sure that the tech stuff is so robust and basically good to go on the back end side, because without that they have no business, and without that there could be massive problems when you're plugging into a blockchain. So it's interesting. I think actually blockchain.info's CEO Nick Carey mentioned this at Coin Summit a few months back in the San Francisco Coin Summit conference, that what he really wants to see is more attention paid to user interface, user experience, and graphic user interface design. And I think, when I heard that, I got really excited because I had just begun working with Tapeke for a couple weeks, and I knew that's what we were going to bring to the table. And I'm excited to show that to all of our colleagues in the Bitcoin community.
well, yeah, and that's another opportunity for other folks, because I had some people say to me, well, we're not interested in Bitcoin because we're into art and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, there's a whole world of opportunity for artists and graphic designers and stuff like that. And I was really excited when I ran across, like coin artists on Twitter and things like that. I was like, oh, wow, this is wonderful.
Yeah, there's lots of folks who don't think that there's a place for them around Bitcoin because it's techie or financial or cryptographic, nerdy, whatever. But as I said earlier in the show, Bitcoin wants you. I mean, if maybe you're not interested, and that's fine. It'll be a matter of months, or hopefully not years, but matter of months or weeks before you become interested out of necessity. So when that time comes, we'll welcome you with open arms. But if you're interested now and you just don't think there's a need for what the skills you have because they're aesthetic or artistic or just things that don't typically apply to financial technology,
Yeah,
I'm here to tell you you're wrong, and let us help you. Let Jamie and I help you find a home.
yeah, and ask maybe, you might have a skill that you don't think would fit in the Bitcoin space, and you just may have not thought of the way it fits. And we may be like, oh, yeah, there's a great need for that. And, like the art thing, there's a lot of opportunity for art in graphic design and things like that. And you don't have to be a computer programmer to get into that. You can not have a computer. You can paint on a canvas and somebody else can put it into the computer for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's definitely homes for people, but I guess just the last thing I'll say about Tapeke is I'd really hope that folks would join our email list. We should be launching our beta version, I would say within 4 to 6 weeks, maybe sooner. There's lots of great progress happening that I get to see, and I'm just, excited to see what happens, and I think the community will really enjoy it. Hopefully, people really love it and find it useful. I think they will. But please join our email list. Go to tapeke.com, T as in Tom, APEKE.com, and scroll down a tad, and you'll see our email list there, and you can learn more about the project and our progress from my email updates that I send out, and from the website itself too. So hopefully folks will join our list, and we're going to be giving out some free trials and actually free lifetime subscriptions as well to some of our early email list subscribers. So hopefully maybe that's enticing for some to jump on board, and you'll be communicating with me if you do. So I look forward to seeing you there.
And we have, it's Bitcoin Chicago, I know, but is that the North American Bitcoin Conference? Is that what it's actually called?
Yeah, so the North American Bitcoin Conference series, the next stop is in Chicago, and that's on July 19th and 20th, and I'll be there. I'll be presenting a Bitcoin beginners workshop on both mornings, and this is actually something that's new to the conference circuit. It's a free event. It's open to the public. I'll share the Eventbrite link with you, Jamie, so that maybe folks can see that in the About section, and go and get your Eventbrite tickets there. Register for the free event either day, the 19th or the 20th, and we'll be giving a short little 101 mini lecture, and then we're going to have a hands-on tutorial workshop to help folks get acquainted with the different applications around Bitcoin, get themselves set up, and also we're working on getting, we're in the final stages, I think, of having a sponsor who's going to donate $10 worth of Bitcoin to everyone who comes. So that's exciting. The rest of the conference is stacked with great talent too, so I really hope people will go to btcchicago.com and just check out the list of speakers. If you're anywhere in the Midwest and you're within driving distance, Chicago's a great town to visit in the summer, and there's no better reason to visit than to go see some of the brightest minds in technology and financial technology and Bitcoin in general. Then there you'll see just an incredible list of talented presenters there. It's going to be a really fun weekend, and I can't wait. So yeah, I'm actually in charge of putting together some portions of the event, one of which is this beginners workshop, but there's lots of other things too. It's going to be a very community-centered, community-focused event. Like I said, we wanted to do something that could be free and open to the public and benefit people who just were walking in off the street and didn't have to buy a huge expensive ticket. So that's great. The other thing about the event is the ticket price is probably the lowest I've seen for any conference ever. It was just reduced to $100. And
really?
if you're a student or a professor with a student or a university ID or a .edu email address, you can, when you're purchasing tickets, you'll get 50% off. So it's even cheaper because we want to have lots of students and the college population, even though it's summertime, come and check out Bitcoin. College Cryptocurrency Network will have a big presence at the conference, and we'll be presenting a Students in Bitcoin panel comprised of many of the members of the different College Cryptocurrency Network chapters. So you'll get to see really the ground floor of a burgeoning, booming industry, and learn a lot too. So it's going to be very community friendly, and I hope folks come.
Yeah, I'm really thinking about going. I I had been thinking about it, and I was waiting to talk to you first on the show to find out more about it. And I haven't been to a Bitcoin conference yet because, well, they've all been so far away for one thing, and I didn't want to invest in the money to fly to one. And this one's actually within driving distance because, well, it's probably a 7, 8 hour drive to Chicago for me, but that's still, you know,
Still somewhat reasonable. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth the trip. I mean, this is going to be one of the bigger conferences and one of the more popular ones after the fact, I suspect, because of the lineup of talent, because of the kinds of events that are going to be held, and it'll be a fun and memorable conference relative to some of the other previous ones. And I've been to some really great ones. I mean, I was at Toronto for the Bitcoin Expo 2014, and I was at DC, Bitcoin in the Beltway, just a couple weekends ago. Both of those were just awesome, fun. You will go to, if any of you are wondering if you should go to this conference, you should for this one reason. You'll meet more friends who you'll probably remain lifelong friends with at one of these things than at any other similar kind of event in your professional history. It's really special to be around these folks, and the conversations are incredibly memorable. The bonds that are created are just so valuable, and that's one of the best ways I think this community has grown over the last year and a half. I mean, these conferences have just exploded. There's like 2 a week now. It used to be 2 a month, and people thought that was crazy. It's like 2 a week.
and that's the thing that excites me more about going than any of the presentations that I saw that were happening was just to go and meet the people that are going to be there, like yourself, and I know Blake Anderson is going to be there, and you know, I'm like, oh, I want to go meet these people in person because I've talked to all these people on the internet, and it would be so fun to go and actually sit and talk with people, or talk to people in person and in meet space, as I say.
Yeah,
But
I hope folks do, especially for that reason. And there's lots of opportunities that happen too. I mean, what I saw at some of these previous conferences is most of the business that you hear about in terms of press releases gets done like a week or two prior, or maybe a month prior to the release of the information. These deals are getting done at these conferences. So you might find yourself in a great opportunity, a great position to share your gifts and talents with the world and Bitcoin community, and this might be the place where you find a sticking point.
yeah, I've seen that in. I did some stuff in the music industry too as a songwriter and stuff. So I went to some songwriter conferences and things like that on the national level, and I saw a lot of deals being made just in lobbies and things like that. And that's how things work in real life these is people make bonds at conferences and things like that and find out they have things in common, and they're like, oh, you do that? Oh yeah, I'm working on this, you're working on that, yeah, let's do this, let's start a business, or let's do this. And that's how companies are born, and
Yep.
things get started. And that's
Yeah,
how.
conferences are like either your conferences are supposed to be about learning and networking. And what conferences in many industries often are boring and mandatory, and maybe something's interesting. Maybe, hopefully, you can take a few things away and improve your job or your daily process or whatever. but more than likely, the people you're forced to be around at these things aren't people you would otherwise choose to be around. They're not very stimulating in most cases, and it's kind of like just nice to have 2 days away from your regular work routine and be off at a conference or something once a year or twice a year or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you know, they can be just basically a way to kill time or something like that. But with these Bitcoin conferences, I mean, the learning and the networking is on steroids. It is just a whirlwind of fun and like fulfillment. I mean, it will, if you just have some conversations with people, share some ideas, ask good questions, ask any questions, and you will walk away richer.
You know, and you know, people worry, like we were talking earlier about the, you know, if somebody thinks it's a stupid question or whatever, if it's a stupid question, it should be easy to answer.
There you go. That's a great point. And you know, why couldn't the person with the knowledge who's being asked the question have some compassion and give that easy answer without some of the stuff we usually see? You know, like the making fun or calling names or yeah.
You know, and
in Bitcoin, you get this. In the Bitcoin community, you have folks who will say, "Oh, let's go for a walk and talk." In so many ways, even if they're like a Skype, a Skype hangout or whatever, like we're doing.
Yeah, and
you'll get the walk and talk atmosphere. People will give you their time in the fastest paced, most quickly innovating and developing industry in the world. They will give you their time. It's awesome.
Uh-oh, the sirens are going off. I think my thunderstorm turned into a tornado.
Uh-oh. Do you have to get underground, Jamie?
I'm not too worried. I never figured I'd live this long anyway.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're still here. I think you got time left.
I was surprised I made it past 25, so I've almost got an extra 20 years.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, this has been, you know, we've went over a half hour longer than I anticipated because this has been such a great interview. And
well, thanks. I was really happy to be invited, and really great to talk to you for the first time, face to face.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure you and I could sit and probably be locked in a room and talk to each other till the end of time. But
I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that with lots of people, especially about this topic, obviously. I mean, probably rambled on a few questions a bit much, as I tend to do sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to come back anytime you want, Jamie, and love talking to you and your audience. And hopefully there's some valuable things I can share that folks can take away from. And yeah, it's just been great. I've met a lot of people through putting myself out there. I hope more folks try to do this. And I think the same is true of you. You probably would agree.
oh yeah, you know, I had heard Andreas has these job fairs all around, and I had seen an interview with him at one of his job fairs. I don't remember where exactly this one was that he was doing it, but he said right now he figures there's, oh, this was probably a month ago, he figured there were 2.5 million people using Bitcoin in the world. And he estimated by the end of 2014 there would be 25 million people. So he figured there would be a growth of tenfold within, you know, 7 months. So that's a pretty good growth, and I consider Andreas a pretty smart guy and pretty knowledgeable on the subject. I have never talked to him personally. This is just from what I know of him.
Yeah, my experience with him has been nothing but positive. I mean, of course, he's someone that so many people in the space admire, and as well they should. I usually describe Andreas as one of the most engaging and generous minds in Bitcoin. He's incredibly generous. The only thing I would add to that is he's really an authentic, genuine person as well, too. So what you see in all these interviews is really how he is. And if you do get the opportunity to chat with him face-to-face or in person ever, it's a real treat, and you can see that. You can see that then too. He's really unique. He stands by his principles, near perfect as far as I've ever been able to tell, which is just so rare, you know. Even for those of us who matters a great deal to stick to, sometimes we find ourselves wondering if we should, you know, question our principles, and at sometimes with an attractive opportunity on the front or something.
Or
But
or back on our opinions because somebody
sure.
might not like that, or
Yeah.
you know, I've found myself in that situation in the last few days even, where I've been like, boy, I wonder if I should, you know, kind of hold those opinions to myself a little more,
Yeah, and
or
the cool thing about Andreas is he'll find a way to stick by his opinion because he's confident in it, as well we all should if we have a confident opinion, and find a way to simply explain why he sees it that way. And there's intellect and logic and also sensitivity to others or the global community, if you will, with the reasons that bolster where he stands. And so I've learned a great deal from him, as I'm sure, you know, hundreds of thousands of other people have. And he's a great person to have in this community, and he's going to be with us a long time. I'm pretty sure. You know, he's had I suspect a lot of opportunities to change direction with where he might end up as an employee or something, or whatever opportunities come his way, and he has denied some very lucrative ones that might have compromised his principles. So this is really he's a great role model, and he's someone that he's a great teacher. And I know he's not trying to be that. He's just doing what he sees is the best he can do for Bitcoin adoption, and happens to be coming along with all these other things, like he's a great teacher, and he's very principled. He's a great role model. He's appealing for all kinds of different people and different demographics, backgrounds, associations, and hopefully, I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, you were wondering if there's any. Initially, you were like, "Wow, there are Bitcoin fans who are not anarchist." This was something that surprised you. Well, Andreas has a great way of setting an example for how all of us who might have an ideological reason for being behind Bitcoin to learn ways of communicating to people who don't share our ideology. And I think that's really valuable, and I hope people can learn a lot from him in that regard.
yeah, and you know, I don't even, all I have for entertainment television now is Netflix, but I got rid of my Dish Network like 2 years ago, and I don't miss it one bit, but there's still so much content just from all the people now that I'm in content with or in contact with on the internet, just through Facebook and Twitter, to watch what they're putting out for YouTube videos and stuff, that I sit on my couch at night and watch the YouTube on my PlayStation 3 on my big screen TV of these presentations, and now I got all these Bitcoin in the Beltway presentations to watch. I've been through a couple of them that Tom put up, but you know, it's amazing how much content is out there, and there's so many people out there that have the same kind of principles and think kind of the same way we do, whereas before all the social networking and stuff was around, if you had these kind of thoughts, you were kind of ostracized and
Yeah.
left a loner, and we're
Yeah,
afraid.
or even marginalized, you know, kind of called names and things, and it's something like anyone with sort of radical views is subject to that kind of treatment the way society has been. But again, as things, these some of these seemingly fringe things start to catch on, and people start to see their merits, they will become more and more mainstream, and that's good for everybody. You know, I'm seeing it. I mean, thanks to the internet, you see a lot more things in the social discussion or the social discourse that are social issues where the left and the right, um, maybe they disagree, but they kind of disagree for the same base reason, and so there's
Mhm.
like there's a way that they can come together because of these issues that are arising in society are the kind that are really set up to bring us closer together. You know, there is lots of division out there still. There's lots of separation, disconnection out there still. But I'm seeing more and more opportunities to bridge gaps and show more and more people that really we all want the same things, and we actually even can agree on some of the ways to get those same things. Especially when you have a distributed global consensus ledger that facilitates that, it gets you really excited.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing too. It brings a lot more hope to your life and outlook on things when you look out there and you see all these smart young people that are, 18, 20 years old, and they're brilliant minds. And you're like, okay, the world isn't doomed. These people are going to figure it out, and they have a very good understanding of things where I never comprehended half the things they did at that age. So I think we should wrap it up here, Will.
Sure.
Apparently the tornado missed me.
Good.
Um, but I think we have Georgia's weather now. This is the way the weather was when I was in Georgia and when I was in the Army in Georgia back in the late 80s. Yeah. Every afternoon at 3:30, it thunderstormed.
Yeah, yeah. It's I've heard lots of severe weather going on in Wisconsin, and I haven't been there for any of it. You know, since moving away and being on the road so much. So I feel for all my Wisconsin homeboys. Be careful.
Yeah, and it just got dark here, and it was downpouring really heavy. The sun was shining when we started this, and we had a full-blown thunderstorm while we were on the line,
Sounds like Wisconsin.
and now it's over, I think, and it's going to clear up. And it it's amazing that we didn't get disconnected or lose power. I would have kept power on my laptop here, but I would have lost my router. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Will,
Same
and
for me, Jamie. Same for me.
we will definitely do this again. And if I forget to put anything in the show notes in the bottom down there,
Yeah.
feel free to let me know. Right now I have btcchicago.com and tapeke.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, those are great. I'm going to share with you the Eventbrite link for folks who want to register for the free Bitcoin workshop for beginners that will be happening in Chicago at the conference. So there's an Eventbrite link that Jamie will have for you to sign up for those.
Oh,
And that's really just so we can get an accurate count, so we know how many seats to have for how many butts we're going to have. So help us fill it up. We'd love to make it a great showing, and I'm sure we will. And maybe you and I will get to meet there, Jamie.
yeah, I'm gonna. I probably won't do it yet today because I still need to get some food and stuff in me yet today and get away from the computer. I spend an obscene amount of time sitting here in front of this thing. I do like 18-hour days some days, but I make some wonderful connections with people like yourself, and I I'm still, I don't know why I'm still in such awe of the technology of this, because I've seen it along since pretty much the start, but this still just blows my mind, being able to
Yeah,
talk to people with video all over the world.
yeah, or being able to transmit value to people all over the world
Being
instantly
able to
without any
transmit
middleman.
physical objects with 3D printers. I mean,
That too, yeah, that's
it's like Star Trek kind of, except for we have money.
yeah,
um, but yeah, I had thought about that with 3D printers was, I had always said what we need, it's kind of like a teleportation device for things. If I want something that's in Japan, well, send it over the internet. Well, you can't send the physical object, but you can send the data on how to put it back together again on this side. And I think we're going to get to the point where printers are going to be good enough that they'll be able to replicate the material that it was originally manufactured with, whether it be, aluminum or titanium or plastic or whatever, because I know they already have printers that'll print metal and things. So, it seems like the next evolution.
yeah. It's going to be an exciting couple years ahead of us when we see kind of the lid come off of these tech innovations. So I hope a lot more folks can look more closely at these developments before, I don't want to say it's too late, but before they get a chance to really be involved at the ground level. And there's no reason that the average person couldn't be involved in some way at this time with Bitcoin or 3D printing or any sort of open source project. Um, there's no reason. If you have all you need is a smartphone, you know.
Or go to the library. There's still public libraries. I know they're taxpayer funded, but I worked for the library system for 13 years, so um, there are public libraries that are available. They're there. You might as well use them. And there are computers hooked up to the internet there, even if you don't have I mean, who are we talking to that doesn't have a computer, I guess? But
Someone at their friend's house who's watching YouTube and doesn't have one at home.
yeah, but that's always an option. I've heard people say that, I don't have a computer or whatever. You can go to the library and use
Yeah.
the computer there. It is a
Yeah, there are
resource.
ways. There are ways to securely use Bitcoin on public computers or a computer that isn't your own. And so please, keep an eye out for more of Jamie's show and other shows that are on the World Crypto Network, and of course, books that are coming out from some of our colleagues. Like I'm thinking of again, Christoph Atlas's Anonymous Bitcoin book, if you're interested in privacy, and the forthcoming book. I believe he's going to do a very simple guide to creating paper wallets. So there's ways to use Bitcoin online as well on public machines that is relatively secure, and you just need to change a couple aspects of your computer behavior, which might be hard in the beginning, but really the second, third, and every subsequent time, it gets so much easier. It becomes kind of very, very easy. It's just that first time of learning something new that's some new territory. But you have people like on this show, both of us, or others, who you might know from Twitter or other shows or whatever, who are happy to help guide you and hold your hand so that you don't step out into the wilderness on your own and sink into some quicksand somewhere. So
yeah, and don't start off by putting your life savings into it either. Just start off with a very small amount.
come
So,
to Bitcoin, North American Bitcoin Conference in Chicago, and hopefully, I'm 90% sure we'll confirm a sponsor who will provide you with $10 of free Bitcoins just for coming and learning about it and getting set up with some other experts who want to help.
yeah, and I've done that too for people where I give them, you know, $10 worth or, you know, 0.001 Bitcoin, which is like $6.30 now or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and then I'm like, do with it what you will. And hopefully they'll enjoy it and learn more about it and pay it forward. That's
the name of the game.
And that's the way we roll.
I think that's a really good way to wrap things up. Thanks, Jamie, for having me.
All right, I will be in touch with you, Will, and
yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime you want. Hopefully people enjoyed this, and maybe we can pick up where we left off on the next one.
Yeah, and next week I think I'm going to have Christoph on. I had a great talk with him this morning, and so be sure to tune in next Monday at 3 o'clock Eastern, and that always confuses me because I'm on Central Time. So, but I decided to just start using Eastern Time. I should just start using Universal Time Code because I get so confused talking to people all over the world. I think everybody should just use Universal Time Code. It would make our lives easier. So until next week, I'm Jamie Nelson and with Will Pangman, and this has been When the Bit Hits the Fan. It makes everybody happy.